The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. This is the second webinar for the Digital Month program presented to you by Accenture on techgig.com. Digital Month is a perfect opportunity for you to learn the latest trends and technologies in digital. It will bring to you various webinars, contests, and panel discussions. While the potential for learning and value add to your career is huge, it also gives you a chance to win exciting gadgets by taking part in the contest on digital. And that's not all. You could also win gift vouchers by merely referring your friends and colleagues to participate in the activities of the Digital Month. And for today's webinar, the topic of today's session is Mobile Application Security, How to Take the Bull by the Horns. And our guest speaker today is Debashish Pramanik. He's the Vice President at Accenture Digital. Debashish Pramanik leads digital security capabilities in India. He's also a subject matter expert in the areas of security, privacy, and compliance. He has 20 years of experience as technology advisor and strategy analyst for emerging digital trends and transformations. His functional expertise includes business development, software products offering creation, technology advocacy, and strategy analysis. So without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker. Over to you, Debashish.
Hello everyone. Good afternoon. This is Debashish, and welcome to this particular session of TechGig. And TechGig is one of our platforms where we go and just offer our current market view, our point of view, and going to bring you what is happening around the globe, around Accenture and its customers, and what are the lessons we learned from them. So in today's session, probably just next probably 30-45 minutes, I'm going to present to you a very brief, concise view of one of the impending tasks in front of all the mobile developers, that how to handle the security. This session is more or less open to everyone, and at the end of this session we'll be having a specific Q&A session where you can be asking any questions that you have, any doubts if you have. Let me go a little further, and there is a small presentation. I'll take the help of the presentation to help you understand how we are approaching these new concepts. So there are broadly these are the topics for today's discussions. We discussed the risk, concerns, and emerging threats. We'll spend some time around them. There are a few slides over there. Then we'll be discussing one standard use case. I think there can be multiple use cases, but one particular use case will be taken care and we'll explain. Then we'll try to revisit what we learned so far, and then we'll just open it up for a summary question and answers. So let's understand that why is mobile security required. So if you look today, the entire mobility is mostly driven by consumerism. As in consumer, you are primarily just engaging yourself in terms of a different behavior altogether that was never been with us during our desktop or even TV days. Like the consumerism in terms of using multiple devices and multiple service providers. It's in terms of how you are basically sharing resources, authenticating them, and just giving them access rights. There are concepts like BYOD that was never been there. Then of course there are user influenced issues. Like this is more of a life cycle issues. The fourth one I'm talking about. It talks about how each and every single aspect of our digital life, how they are connected to each other, and how we are sharing resources, our own personal views to all of these devices, to all the people connected to us. Now, if you look at this complex ecosystem that has come forward, we also have another big issue. The cyber criminals, they also understand our concerns. And they are also coming up with new and new threats. If you look at the one that I'm presenting today, it came from the Verizon 2014 data breach. I mean, if you remember that in the year of 2006 and 7, when iPhone has become more and more powerful, since then till today, 2014 middle, physical hacks came down. It is surprising. There is no brute force attack. Misuse also almost steady. But if you see where it is going up, ups like in the form of hacking, in the form of malware, in the form of social issues. So this clearly shows that threat landscape also changed considerably in the last 4 or 5 years. That's primarily because of this kind of nature of our new behavioral aspects. We'll understand this thing a little more. Let's move to the next slide. This is where I'm trying to give you an idea, like what exactly we are talking about mobile threats, especially from a consumer perspective. I mean, we have issues in terms of our data thefts, so that you all know, like typically in the form of contacts, call logs. It can be in the form of IP and trade secrets also. You have issues like impersonations, like SMS redirections, sending email messages. Those are the things are very important. Privacy, I mean, each and every one of us, we are concerned about today's privacy concerns and how we are going to get rid of them. Surveillance. I mean, ever since that Snowden thing came to light or limelight, every single person is worried about surveillance of our digital life. What is truly with us, whether that is really with us. So today, like there are tools available. We can handle remotely your audios, your cameras, your call logs, your location tracking systems. I mean, this entire thing, there may be many more, but I just thought of just putting these 4 or 5 very, very important things that most of you know, but you didn't know the concept, I mean, the implications of them or the depth in which they're gone. I mean, if you look at like New York governor, I think a couple of months back, he said in Bloomberg TV that 1/3 of all New Yorker basically gone through some degree of data theft or impersonation or surveillance level issues in 2013. It's in the country in US, 1/3 of one of the largest cities in the world. Why we are concerned? There are 2 parts. One part is given down. I mean, if you look at the below, so there are all those small, icons over there. If you see all those icons, I don't know how many of you are aware of them. These are those small tools available on the web for a download of $8 to $10 per month, or maybe $50 to $60 a year. Any one of them can do potentially all of this. So you can understand, for possibly like $50 a year, if someone really wants, if they can hack onto your phone, they can potentially just going to get this. Now look at the other side of it. What is the average? So on an average, cost of corporate data breach from a corporate side is $3.5 million. These are US dollars. That is a 15% increase also. On an average, each single single data record lost or stolen is going to cost an individual company somewhere close to around $145 to $150. These are the humongous numbers. And then again, that those ease at which anybody can get into your system, that is also threatening. So I think these are the combination of things, I think, that is keeping us nervous. And that is where companies like Accenture, we are really putting hard effort to understand how to handle this issue. Let me move the next slide. So in the next slide, what we are going to see is more or less, I mean, these are the typical like spectrum. If you look at one side, like consumer side of the spectrum, another side enterprise side of the spectrum. Let's take social engineering because with the time limit I'm having, I thought of just explaining one of them. Social engineering is basically when people are going to go through some of your social tools. It can be a Facebook tools of social media. It can be any other SMS, social level SMS. So what typically they do, I'm just trying to explain how it works, is that they're going to send you an SMS or post a genuine looking app in the App Store. And the moment you are going to open that SMS or download that app, that's the entry point. So the moment you download it, the Trojan gets inside and it spreads immediately because it's at a lot of rights, system level access rights. Probably like if it is going to be a jailbroken device, it is even faster. So once you install it, that Trojan, either in the form of an app download or in the form of a fake SMS, then the attacker is going to have a remote access to your device. And that's the time anybody can do, that attacker can do anything with your device. Probably even in a boardroom, probably you are discussing something. They can reportedly turn on probably the audio part and they can listen to. They can possibly look into most of your keylogin thing, like when you are going to type in some passwords, they can easily make it out. So it's not going to be that difficult. That's what I'm trying to say. It's only the access is critical. But if we are not going to be concerned and we are alert, probably we are going to let them get in. Let me give you some example. Now, these two screens, if you look at the two screens, one is basically a legitimate app, and another one is the fake app. Now, if you look at how closely they look at, how good they are, unless you double check some of the very nitty gritty, like the small lock button over the for HTTPS, or some copyright issues here and there, unless you are very familiar to your own mobile app, is very important. It will be almost impossible for you to just catch. Look at the other screen on the very right of you, where they are openly asking your user ID and password, and in case you've taken them for granted and just share your user ID password, what is going to happen. So these are some of the examples that's available in the system, in the web. So what we are talking about today, many people, many of you probably having this idea that how it is different from web or mobile applications. Many of us, we know for almost last decade, e-commerce applications, web applications. Hotmail is there for last almost 20 years, 25 years. So what is different for mobile applications? From a mobile perspective, if you are talking about, I put it as much as clarity with that particular diagram. The attack surface is different. Many times, like in case of mobile, what you need to do is need to concern about your lack of input validation. That is important also. But from a net perspective, the four areas you need to concern: the application and the code part of it, data in the transit issues, data at rest, and the server-side components. So more or less, if you consider these four items, or maybe small items here and there, from an app's perspective, your app can be considered secure. Then rest is something else, like in the form of network, in the form of device. So those are beyond control today. Let me go a little deep to explain you. So we'll take a sample use case possibly, and we'll go from there. I think the screen is going to take a little time to get refreshed. So what I'm trying to just share with you, let the screen come, is trying to give you an idea and projected idea how much is going to be the size of this digital security. Give me a little while. I think your screen is not yet fully just there. Let me see if the screen is there. No, it is not there. Yes, so now it has come. Great. So this is where I'm trying to give you an idea, like, what is the actual size of it? I mean, why companies like Accenture, while individual developers, testers, security analysts like you going to be interested about all about this? In the year 2013, that the year gone by, on an average, estimated enterprise side of the mobile security revenue is somewhere close to more than $1.2 billion. And if you look at the graph I'm presenting through IDC, it's somewhere going to be 1.4 billion for this year. And last year itself, it is 32%. So this is a huge amount of number. If you look at the kind of mobility we are talking about and the kind of security penetration in the mobile app ecosystem, this number is peanut. It's really, really very, very small. It's only tip of the iceberg. I mean, today, how many of us we are protecting our systems from any kind of, mobile attacks in the form of a mobile security product? It's not. So it's going to go up much, much bigger than this. I would consider this a very restrictive or like, conservative figure. Now, if you look at, majority of the spend is expected to be in the LATAM and APAC region. One of the reasons behind them is not only the mobile penetration is highest, people are more digital over there. Their life system or their life is already digitally enabled, mobile enabled first. So many of them are mobile first today. So the spending is much, much higher over there. Let me go to a little deep into what we are talking about in terms of a use case. Now, in the next slide, what we are trying to do, I'm just trying to project most common use cases that we see from our customers in Accenture. There may be more, but these 5 are most important. So there would be issues in terms of developing secure applications. That can be one of the business case. Another business case can be in terms of adapting BYOD or consumerization of IT. It can be in the form of providing secure access to multiple level enterprise applications and data. So there may be different use cases, but let's say for today's discussion, I think we are primarily going to consider developing secure applications. So let me go a little further and dig through how it looks like. Now, I'm trying to give you a standard use case. So whenever a commercial application, mobile application, let's say mobile banking application, a consumer-facing mobile app, if you're going to analyze them, this is what you are going to get. You have some device level control and the risk associated to them. You have some network level control and risk associated to them. And then of course your app level. Anyway, we are going to discuss more on apps for sure today, but from a device perspective, there are multiple things. I mean, in terms of secure functionality, in terms of understanding impact of data at rest and all those stuff. Many people they use it, I would say, from a Wi-Fi perspective also, and many a time we don't know, or probably very few of us we actually take care of Wi-Fi level security. That's another big important area. And then in the apps, there are multiple things. I think few of them we already discussed, but areas like how to decide token management, data leakage issues, or overall fraud level issues. Those are our concerns today. So we'll discuss them. So let's go one by one. Let me first give you the 4 most important thing, that how you are going to handle the access control and the data in transit issues. I mean, if you look at, I put it in 2 parts. So one part is basically login and the access, and the second part is transaction level details. So let's say from a mobile banking perspective, if I take this example, it would be something like you would be able to log in and try to see your statement and other stuff. You can see a lot of what is happening is a reading level access, and then of course you want to do some transactions, want to transfer some money. So these are the 2 different level of access if you look at. What are the top level of choices today? Because many of these mobile systems, they have second factor authentication. So beyond user ID and password, many of them will be asked for OTP, like one-time password, or it is going to be a mobile SMS 10. It can be mobile ID. It is not very much well established in Indian market, but globally it is very strong. Or a photo 10. Photo 10 is typically QR code. Most of the government banks in India, they offer photo 10 also. They'll ask you to look at a picture that you selected earlier and say this is the correct picture that is there every time you're going to log in there. Now, if you look at from all this perspective, I think M10, mobile ID, and photo 10, they're relatively okay, but they're okay up to the threat credential of phishing level issues, session hijack, or session riding level issues. But the moment you are going to go for man-in-the-middle issues or malware level issues, I think none of these two-factor authentication are good enough to handle it. So malware, like that kind of mobile malware that we just given the example in the form of phishing attacks, if you really want to handle them, you have to harden the app, and there are multiple ways to harden them. Similarly, like man-in-the-middle kind of a situation, I think the best option is that you have your own app store and do that. In Accenture, we have some of our customers who ask for that, and we have at least a couple of vendors we are working with them where your mobile banking app can be exclusively listed in your own app store instead of going to iStore or Android Marketplace. You can have it something like ICICI Banking App Store, or it can be Accenture App Store, things like that. That is possible today. Let's go a little further down. Encryption and data at rest issues. Now, from an encryption perspective, if you look at, I think the primary control and concern you should be having is that cache management, or how you're going to just deriving the keys from the user ID and password, or it can be just whether it is there from encryption level keys. But net, if there is going to be any data, ideally for most of your consumer facing applications, they don't have any data stored, persistent data inside your device, but in case it is there, the best idea is to encrypt it. Now you can always suggest your user to encrypt the entire device data, but that may be an overkill. While you are developing this application, you can use third-party tools, or programmatically you can just do that. All of them are doable, and this is another best practice from Accenture from our side. We suggest most of our developers, and also we suggest our customers also to follow this. Now let's go to the next one. From an application coding vulnerabilities perspective, I think this is another key areas. Now application coding and vulnerabilities, if you look at primarily, they are into three parts. One is sensitive data leakage. That can be done in the form of name, number, device ID. For some reason you are exposing them in the form of code. If somebody can debug the code, they can see it. Or when your code is encountering an error, probably you are not capturing it, the error message may be showing a portion of it. Sensitive data storage, I think this precisely whatever you are going to do in terms of removable media. It can be in the form of micro SD cards, your typical USB jacks. Many people, they try to, let's say you want to store your banking SMS or bank related SMS or OTPs on a small SD card, micro SD card that is attached to your phone. Question is that, is your application going to take care of the encryption of that? Or is there any sensitivity data storage you are doing? That means you are not allowing individuals to store these kind of important messages in any removable media. I think these are the concerns your security analyst or architect should bring forward during the design phase. And this should be one of the key areas to look at. Another common mistakes people do, the hard-coded password or keys. These are also very important things. I mean, often developers, they do this thing while they are debugging their code, and then they forget. they never take it out, and they remain, and that creates another problem. In the next slide, what I'm trying to give you an idea in the form of what you can do. Typically, like, for any particular application comes, any customer comes, then how we are going to handle this entire ecosystem, how we are going to handle this entire project for them. So if you look at from a sample strategy perspective, let's say for your next project, how we are going to do that. I think we discussed the typical risks, and then we discussed, like, what are the key areas you need to consider. Now I'm trying to tell you from an overall project perspective how you are going to handle this situation. So from a risk perspective, few things you need to take a business call. Let's say physical loss, theft, or disposal. Can you really handle them? No, you cannot, because you don't own the device. So device is owned by your users. So how you are going to handle them? You leave it to your users. You can probably teach them, you can advocate them, but beyond that, it is not possible. Then, like, you have the concept of malicious software, and in the malicious software, then typically, like, you are having anti-malware, and this is some of the things, like, let's say anti-malware software. Who is going to buy it? I mean, if you ask your users that you buy it before you are going to use my mobile banking application, I think not everybody is going to have it. So what option you are going to have? You have to probably educate them, or you do it in such a way that while you are developing the code, during the code development itself, you take care of malicious code. I mean, there are tools, there are vendors. In Accenture, we are working with at least a couple of them. Using them and their software, you can probably just harden your app. So that app is going to have runtime protection from a malicious software. Then comes your actual security requirements. So how you are going to handle them, those security requirements? How you are going to handle the security requirements? I think, just a minute. Give me a second. Yeah, I'm sorry, someone just, I have to just encounter someone. So coming back to our system, from a security risk perspective, I think there are two broad areas how we're going to handle. You can handle in the form of secure SDLC. That means security, you put it in the form of software lifecycle, or you can go for security in the form of code review as something like an on-demand. So if we are going to go for a security code review, what is going to have in there? There can be security code review in the form of static code, or security code review in the form of dynamic code review. Now, static security code review is primarily inside out, so that is going to take care of your own mistakes, whatever we discussed so far, that coding level issues. And then you have dynamic level code review. So those are mostly outside in. That means if your app is going to be published in the system, how it is functioning in the form of multiple malwares. Now, beyond them, then comes, the typical areas that you need to focus. So that I put in the area, like, in the form of greens. So you have transcode encryption, you have secure content, DRM, multi-factor authentication. These are not always required, but these are very important things. So while you are designing your entire application from a security perspective, these are the items you should be look at. These are the security, I would say, like, pillars you should be looking at based on the kind of threat you are expecting in your system. And then there are certain external system in the form of, like, how you're going to handle them. Let's say, like, secure app distribution, or it is in the form of remote and offline support. So what is happening is that, from a secure app distribution perspective, your mobile application, as I said, like, can be securely distributed through multiple, channel. It can be your own app store, or if you are going to do it, from a standard, application store. Another big areas of concern is that how you are going to give them a remote and offline support. Let's say someone's, password is not properly working, someone already got hacked, how to handle them. So those are the situations you need to look at. So this particular, single slide, I thought of just, projecting to you to give you an idea, like, how you're going to plan, what are the areas you should look at, and what are the key security requirements also. Let me go to the next slide. These, we are almost coming to an end. We are trying to just, figure out what are our key concepts. So if you look at from an end-to-end perspective, mobile app protection, it is going to have 4 different key controls from an app perspective. First thing is your access control. These access controls are in the form of, it can be PIN, password swipes, as I said. It can be complex password. It can be delay, locks, interactives. It can be keyloggers, spywares, and all this. So these access controls are primarily going to protect yourselves from thieves' enablements. This is the area where you are going to think about 2-factor or 3-factor authentication. Just to help you understand, Accenture is very much committed in terms of this access control, and probably we are one of the very few companies who are directly working with customer to implement biometric level controls. So biometric level controls are typically your 3rd-factor authentication controls. Then you have the concept of this encryption. Ideally, encryption should be very good for enterprise level applications, but even for any standard application, if you see that your application is going to have any persistent data storage inside the device, you should be always concerned about encryption. Not only in terms of persistent storage, in terms of even application lifecycle also. Whenever you are going to, let's say, communicate from one system to another system, make sure, like, how you are going to manage your encryption from a network perspective, from a data in transit perspective. Another big area is the cache management. Is your cache encrypted? How often you are going to delete and refresh cache? So these are important things. Third, of course, is basically application control. Now, this is a little different, okay? So you need to understand that, where it is becoming important. One way to handle it is that if you are really concerned about malware attacks are typically should be contained within an application control. That means, is there any way you can run your application and data with isolation? Is there any containerization possible? I mean, yes, many of the tools and many of the platforms today, they support containerization, but at the end, how easily you use it? Many of your applications are browser-based. Are you just invoking a secure browser session? How to handle them? How you are putting signatures? That's very important. Many of our customers, quite a few in fact, they ask that, can you put a remote kill for a particular application? Now, remote kill for a particular application is not possible unless you have your application running in isolation. So what happens, like, if I see that something is hacked, or if I lose my device while my session is still on. So using remote kill switch, the administrator can directly go there and the kill application. Or even as an individual owner or user, if you have a kill switch access, you can log in using a different system, maybe a desktop or laptop, and go to your access page of the app and then kill it. Of course, it is not available as it is. You have to define this kind of control, and then you have to distribute this kind of capability when you are distributing your app. Last thing is not 100% in consumer domain, but many of the consumer apps also ask for remote and lock level activities, or like even like remote and local wipe level activities. Now, what would be an ideal use case? Ideal use case, if I can understand, would be something like an insurance app or automotive apps. So these apps are not always used by enterprise or the end user. There may be a third layer, maybe your business partners. So maybe an insurance agent who is not an actual, is just an affiliated agent, may not be directly working for the actual company. So for example, like, if you're talking about Prudential, so if there is an app from Prudential, other than Prudential's own users and Prudential Enterprise, there may be Prudential affiliates who want to use it. Now for these people, most of them, they work on BYOD situations. The individual insurance agents, they bring in their device, and those device owners, they have to take care of the security. Now, unless you have a remote or local wipe enabled for them, it will be very difficult to handle their situation. So they are not exactly an enterprise, neither they're end user level, application owner. So for these kind of middle people, lock and wipe is very much important. So I guess you understand from an overall application security perspective, from a mobile perspective, key areas of your concern will be access control, your encryption, your application control. What are the key areas we already discussed, and how we are going to handle them, that we also discussed in the form of SDLC or on-demand code review. And then there are some artifacts. Now, everything we cannot discuss in today's call, primarily because of time limitation. But all I can say that this field is very, very encouraging, and most of our customers, they are now aware of the situation, and Accenture is very much committed to just help with them, and we are doing that. And this is one of our point of view I thought of sharing with you today. We almost came to an end, and I thought of just sharing my parting slide. So what we do in Accenture Mobile Security Services. So these are our 5 different pillars. So we have the entire strategy that is typically done by our Accenture management consultancy folks. So we develop strategy roadmaps, and we incorporate security strategy there as well. So these are strategic goals. Then we have our entire SI groups or integration groups. So where we architect, design, install, configure, and we do any kind of actual software development and testing activities for our customers in mobile security and mobile development. There is a group that also I'm involved. We look into governance. These governance are in the form of privacy, regulatory issues, or overall, like any other governance in actual reality. It can be in the policy side, procedures, or incident response. Then we have operations. I think that's what we discussed some time back. Operations are a very important thing I mean, you just go there and develop an app and put it in the App Store and expect users to use it, and that's one part of it. At the end of the day, users may have 10 different problems, and how you're going to handle them. Then we have entire managed service. So in the managed service mode is basically primarily build and operate and even run. This is a run mode. So where we are going to develop the entire strategy, we integrate, we put the governance in place, we set up our operations, and we run it as a single component. So that's managed services. So these are the top 5 pillars from our mobile security services perspective. Then I think I'm more or less done. In next couple of minutes, I thought of sharing with you that what's happening. I think we have Accenture Digital is formed in 3rd of December last year, 2013, and it's a separate business unit for us. And this month, entire month of August, we are celebrating, or you can say like this entire month we are considering as a part of our digital month. And in the digital month, we are engaging with folks like you, our business partners, our customers, and all the people around us who are into our Accenture ecosystem. There are exciting prizes, people who are going to participate in contests like you, and I'll sincerely encourage you to just come forward and be a part of it. And you see like what Accenture is doing. There are daily gift vouchers and many other event sessions happening, especially like whatever we cannot do today, we'll have some degree of Q&A. But if you have career level opportunities with digital and those degree of Q&A, 19th of August we are having a session. So I'll really suggest you to just go there and join us on that day, especially for Q&A session. So that's precisely from my side, and now probably we are open to take up questions if there is anything. So
thanks for the insightful presentation, Devashish. Let's quickly take up the questions now, as you have just mentioned. I request you to read out the questions and their answers so that all our users may listen to your insights. Are you able to see the questions coming into you?
Yes, I can do that. I can see it. So this is from Kaushik Kumar Ghosh. He is asking, I have one question. How we secure data while developing iOS applications? I mean, exactly that's what we discussed through this. There is nothing like only for iOS. iOS specific thing is only very technical in nature. But if you are going to develop, you have to understand that what is your broad scope. Is it a consumer facing application? Is it an enterprise facing application? Because at the end, mobile systems, it will be having lot of controls will be on the device. So if device is something that you think individually you can control, many of the things will be much easier to you. You will allow the device to control. If you think device is something you cannot control, then you have to build those controls using your applications. And then of course, like you see like how you're going to handle the encryption part, your authorization, authentication part, or access rights, and whether you want to go for any app isolation. I think we discussed so many of the issues, as I said, like look at the hard coding of passwords, look at the server side of the issues. So we can do that. There is a second question from Sushila Madan. How can the transaction being made secure in mobile devices in pool transaction methods? So a good question. So what is happening, like this is an authentication mechanism, probably like you need to bring in there. I think we won't be able to discuss in detail today, but mostly you need to take care while you are designing your authentication system. So there is two-factor authentication when you are going to go. So there is a request response model, so you can do that. Abhishek Mishra asking for, please elaborate a bit biometric level control procedure taken by you. Good question. I won't be able to give you much detail in terms of what we specifically done for some of our customers, but in general, where we see the values coming in, we are seeing the values coming in the form of voice biometrics. One of the primary reasons for voice biometrics is that it doesn't need beyond a normal education level. Also, it is applicable to any device because most of the devices are voice enabled. So that way, voice biometrics are there. Most of the cases, it is in the form of, let's say you enable a voice biometrics, how you are going to implement it. So implementation happens to third parties. There are multiple vendors in the then. You can go for Dawn, you can go for Nuance. There are multiple of them. So you need to work with them to see what is the best use case for you, and you can do that. But in Accenture, we have run very good demos from them. Sumbet Jain, he is asking, does Accenture deals in hybrid application and how to provide security in those applications, especially on server communications? All right. So yes, Accenture does. Almost 40% of our applications today we developed from our app factory. They are hybrid in nature. So in typical terms, like if you have a Accenture level middleware that is going to give you UI, if you're talking about that degree of hybrid apps, one of the primary areas we noticed that beyond your design, you try to invoke some static code review or like standard code review. So during security code review process, we look at it from a server perspective. I think standard web services level problems are there. So you shouldn't be having like SQL injection issues, or like you shouldn't be going for hot password issues. So those kind of stuff. I think if you work closely with your security analyst for static code review, he or she would be able to answer all this. But these are standard processes in Accenture we do for most of our applications we develop. Next question is app wrapping one of the better ways to secure app? It is from Abhijit Naik. Are there any standard methodologies to implement app wrapping? Yes, so app wrapping is a very important thing. Multiple ways you can do. Essentially, there are two different ways. One thing is that you use a wrapper once your app is developed. That is good for third-party apps. That means you are not developing app, but you are securing it with your techniques. Another one is basically putting it inside an overall wrapper. There are tools for each one of them. In one case, so basically the difference is in these two app wrapping styles is that one is specific for a particular code, another is specific for a group of particular applications. So if you think a single layer of policies to be applicable to multiple group of applications, then go for group level, otherwise go for individuals. So almost every single tool they offer this thing. You can also go for third-party app wrappers available, depending on what kind of tool you are going to implement. What is the best way to do malware analysis on mobile application? Not very sure if I could understand, but let me put it this way. Malware, whichever form it is, ultimately you need to stop it in only two ways. Either you use a third-party tool. That tool is going to be installed on your device. It can be almost like a standard McAfee or Norton antivirus tool that you're using on your actual desktop. The same way you can do that, that you have to pay for it. Other way of doing, a smart way of doing this thing is that you put it inbuilt inside your code. So that means when you are developing the code, there are anti-malware systems. You have to work with them, and you have to just harden your application using those anti-malware tools. The difference is if you are going to do it from a coding perspective, then you can distribute it freely without involving your customer. So that means every time you are distributing your app, since it is a part of your code, that anti-malware software is also getting distributed. Otherwise, what is going to happen, you have to every time rely on your customer, and it will be depending on them. In both the ways, there will be cost involved. Santi Singh asking, can you suggest some good security analysis tool for mobile app? Yes, there are multiple of them. My personal preference for static code review probably like going to be check marks for hybrid applications. Veracode nowadays is very popular. But the problem with that, you have to share your binary with them. That probably some of your customers, if you're working for third party, your customers may not be agreeing to. Beyond these, some of the dynamic testing tools like HP45, IBM AppScan, they also do some degree. Ultimately, what you need to do, you have to look for a tool that offers both security static as well as dynamic. Most of these tools are a bit costly. It's somewhere close to around $4,000 to $5,000 a month. So think about that. Next question is are you using, so this is from Mitul Thesia, I guess, I'm reading it right. Are you using any best practice mobile testing framework? Good. So yes, we are having very good detail of best practice over there. So if you look at how we are doing it, we are many of our application, if your customers are ready to take the cost of it or bear the entire cost of this entire security part, we invoke something called secure SDLC. So secure SDLC means right from the beginning of app design, one of the security analysts is going to be there. So the threat model will be discovered, and accordingly the security suggestions will go there in the design, and from there everything will move. If that is not there, what bare minimum we ask our customers is that go for standard security static code review and dynamic code review. So there are frameworks for that. I won't be able to share this thing because there are some copyright issues over there. It's an open forum and we need to go for some degree of confidentiality clause before I can share. But all I can tell you, yes, a company like Accenture, we put huge amount of thoughts behind it, and it is there. All right. One more question. I'm seeing it. Does mobile security strategy remain same for any platform, or it differs depending upon platform and app used? Emrao. I would say you look at it from this perspective. Ultimately, what you're trying to do, you're trying to understand the threat around your mobile application and ecosystem. So look at that thing more from a business perspective. So what are the typical threats? If you can figure it out, then so that remains the same. So that means if there is a banking application and you understand the use case you are going to implement inside the applications, so then you have to come up with what are the typical security threat model over there. Then while implementing it, I think multiple ways we do. So as I said, if you are going to go for pure native applications, then of course you'll have to use a lot of platform level help, and then of course the technology wise it will differ. So on Google platform it will work in one way, in Android and iPhone it will be a little different. Sometime back someone asked about iPhone. iPhone by default, since it is a very close-ended process, it's by nature it is a bit more secure. I think the best secure ecosystem is probably Windows Phone, but after Windows Phone it is probably iPhone, and Android is most open today. So yes, so there will be some challenges. Then of course if you are going to use a third-party tool, depending on what you are going to do, if you're going to do the protection from a device perspective, you can go for an MDM or app to MAM tool. If you are going to go for an apps perspective, you can go for any of the app development tool from a security perspective. So those tools when you're going to use, then individual platform specific complexities are not going to be so important. Any other question? I have some more time, probably I can take a couple of more. Okay, so I have one more. Santi Singh. Is it safe to store HIPAA-based PHI data on mobile devices? If yes, then what is the best way of securing the PHI information? What is the best encryption technique for protecting PHI data? I think I won't be able to go much detail into this specific questions, but let me give you this answer straightforward. HIPAA or not HIPAA or any other regulatory framework, at the end of the day, if you are going to store anything on the device and that is for individual consumers, you got to be a little careful, because first you have to figure it out if it is a regulatory risk, whether you are going to take care of what regulator asks you to do. It may so happen many of the cases in HIPAA, I know that certain data you are not supposed to even store over there. But in case you are going to store for whatever may be the reasons, you have to take permissions, exclusive permissions from your consumer. That is the first thing. And second thing, while doing so, you have to encrypt it. Now you are asking that what kind of encryption techniques. I think there are multiple ways. I think hash-based techniques are probably most commonly used. You can use some third-party tools that is also available, especially on Android platforms. That will protect you from, that will give you some degree of protection. Of course, you can ask for, while you are developing it, by default, I think, you need to go through, I think, some degree of containerization and see, even if you are not protecting individual hash data, probably entire app is, protected and run in the encrypted form. I can probably answer this thing in a separate session, because in this session, probably detailing out of individual solutions is probably beyond scope. Abhishek Mishra asking one more question. On Android, an app can run on its sandbox. Please explain how it can access the system level access. No, that is, I don't think, I answered, I understand the question fully, but I'm assuming this is what you were asking. That if you are going to run an application in the sandbox, whether you would be having system level access or not. Yes, you can do that. The app by default can ask for a system level privilege, but there are some checks over there, especially based on device. So if it is Android, it is much easier. But there is a catch. I mean, if you put, or if you've taken help from a third-party MDM tool, and the tool, if you put a policy saying that don't provide system level access, then it will not have. But otherwise, why not? You can do that. There is a little tweak, but you can do that. Okay, so there is a last question I think I'll be taking. Wilfred, I will say, like, last name is L-O-C-H. I'm sorry if I just, mispronounce your name. Within Accenture, the question asks, within Accenture, do you have a dedicated security, I'm trying to say hackers team, to perform penetration tests on the application you develop? Of course we have. And it's a very big team. I mean, mobile security and mobile thing is probably relatively new, probably last couple of years. But this kind of penetration testing is going on for overall digital applications for ages. But just to answer you, yes, so we have, but also at the same time, we are always in desperate need for additional, I would say, talents. So one way, yes, we have, but the business is so strong and the demand is so strong, we also have constant needs. So there is always an open room for such support. I think we came to an end almost. Aradhana, if you're there, you want me to take any more questions?
There are a lot of questions coming in, Debashish, but due to time constraint, I have to request you to take the unanswered questions offline, which I will share with you through email. So if you would like to sum up the session for today, you can do it now.
Great. So folks, I have probably another 60 seconds. So quickly, mobile security is new, but don't think it from an isolation. I think that's my suggestion. I think mobility at the end of the day is completely governed and controlled by consumers. This is such an ecosystem. Every single user is a consumer. So it is ever changing. So since it is ever changing, the threat landscape is also ever changing. So don't become a stereotype at the end of the day and try to look at mobile security in an isolation. I am trying to give you one area, something on the application side of the security. But in Accenture, application security is one of the 7 different groups. I mean, we have device level security, identity level security, we have network level security. There are multiple areas. But what I thought that probably application level security is possibly most important thing to most of you, because you being the wonderful developers, talented developers, you should understand the concepts. It's not that you need to just do the security part yourself, but at the end of the day, you are also responsible to keep this thing counted. Accenture, we are devoted to that, and I would say we are market leaders in many areas, including this. We have started doing this thing probably a couple of years back. Today we have a very strong team, and we are ever increasing. I mean, our customers are having faith in us, and we have been delivering them, really, really good, security-enabled, mobile software. So in this month, we are celebrating, is our digital month. We are going beyond mobility, and we are considering mobility as a part of overall digital. So security is also just, probably gearing up for that. So probably next time when we are going to talk to you, we'll be talking more from a digital security perspective, how we are going to bring in mobility, portal, social, all securities together, and how we are going to present it. So I think that would be an exciting time and exciting discussions. Till that time, I'll wish you good luck and best of you to your whatever doing today. And just keep an eye open, eyes and ears open. In this month, you'll be having some exciting news from Accenture. See if you can participate. There are a lot of prizes, cash to win, and we'll see how to go there. So thanks very much for your time, and I appreciate.
And I'm really thankful to our guest speaker today for conducting this wonderful webinar with us. It was indeed a great session. I would also like to thank all our participants for their support in making this webinar a success. The recording of the webinar will be available on techgig.com by tomorrow. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Debashish, for taking the time out and having us. I hope you have a great evening ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.